graduation should really be an exciting time in a young person's life as they are getting ready to leave high school and move on to the next level of their lives. But for many students who have IEPs, it in fact is a very important time to make sure that all the right decisions are made and none of the wrong decisions are made, because it can have pretty severe consequences on what are potentially continuing special education transition services, Jen.
Yeah, and so we want to talk about two key areas that Julie and I have seen in our practices have resulted in some mistakes being made that unfortunately mean sometimes years of special education services being lost to a student who is actually entitled to receive them. And those two areas are the issuance of a diploma and also whether to walk with your class, okay? So we're going to just sort of break them down. So let's start with the issuance of a diploma, okay? Bottom line here, Julie, is this. If your child receives a high school diploma, there is a very strong argument to be made by your school district that your child is now no longer entitled to receive any special education or related services. The issuance of that diploma in most cases terminates services. And Julie, let's face it, services for some students are very expensive, and school districts sometimes issue diplomas prematurely to students, I'm sorry to say, because now their obligation is over. And so if you as a parent or you as a student suspect that you're not ready to get that diploma, that you really need additional time after that traditional senior year in high school, don't wait until the diploma has been issued to act. You should be acting before that. And in fact, Julie, the United States government that enforces these things, these special education provisions, has actually said that graduation is what's called a change in placement for purposes of something called stay put, which is a complicated thing. But in English, what that means is that if you as a parent or as a student disagree with the school district's determination to graduate the child, then really you have a right to stop it, but you have to do it before it happens, because otherwise it's very difficult to rectify after the diploma's been issued.
Well, so here's the thing. We want you to know ahead of time. You need to know all of these things before you're ready to walk across the stage and receive your diploma, and somebody has to go in and reach the diploma out of somebody's hand so you don't officially receive it. We don't want you to do that. You need to be very prepared and know way ahead of time that if in fact you receive the official diploma, for all intent and purposes, special education is over. Yeah.
In addition to being cautious about whether your child actually receives that high school diploma, a lot of issues come up about whether or not a student should walk with their class or participate in the graduation ceremonies. And this question I'm asked a lot. And so what we want you to know is this. If your child, if you as the student are actually going to participate in the graduation ceremonies but not be issued the actual diploma, you still have a right to participate in those graduation ceremonies. I've actually heard of cases and read cases, Julie, where a student and their family said, we know that the student is entitled to another 2 or 3 years of transition services past the traditional senior year, but this is the group of kids that my child has been with in school since kindergarten, and we fully expect that he is going to participate in those graduation ceremonies, even though we know he's not going to be issued a diploma. And the school district took the position, Julie, that no, if you want to participate in this graduation ceremony, then you're going to get your diploma and your services are going to be over. And the courts found that that was an unlawful action for the school district to take, because really what you're doing is it's borderline extortion in my book. You're basically saying to this student who very much wants to participate in an important life ceremony that you can't do it unless you waive your entitlements. I mean, that's really what was happening in that particular case. The court said no go, not a lawful thing for the school to do.
Well, that's a good tip for parents to have, is to know that you can't be denied your right or your child's right to participate in those ceremonies, because as you said, Jen, that's part of the pomp and circumstance of it all, and that's a very important aspect of life.
Right, and an argument even could be made that if a student who has a disability is being denied the opportunity to participate in that ceremony simply because he or she is getting additional services, that may even just be a pure discrimination issue under a different aspect of the federal law, Section 504, where they're not allowing the student a benefit of that school district just because they have a disability. So we want you to know that if you feel like you're being placed in this situation where you have to make a terrible choice between whether your child participates in the graduation ceremonies or gets services, you shouldn't be having to make that choice legally. You should be able to do both.